prayer is not what you were taught. Listen carefully, because this right here is where everything begins to shift. Not your church attendance, not your worship songs, not your emotional moments at the altar, your understanding of prayer. Because if you misunderstand prayer, you will spend your entire life talking to God and never getting any results. Now that is uncomfortable, but it is necessary, because most people were not taught how to pray. They were taught how to beg. Lord, please. God, if you can. Father, I'm asking you to. And it sounds spiritual. It sounds humble. It even sounds sincere. But it is not what Jesus taught. Because when the disciples came to Jesus, they did not ask him how to preach. They didn't ask him how to perform miracles. They didn't ask him how to build a ministry. They asked one thing: Lord, teach us to pray. Why? Because they saw something. They saw that every time Jesus prayed, something happened. Blind eyes opened. Storms responded. Demons fled. Provision showed up. And they realized there is a connection between how he prays and the results he gets. Now here's where most people miss. When Jesus responded, he didn't give them a religious chant. He didn't give them something to repeat mindlessly. He gave them a template, a structure, a system, and we turned it into a ritual. Our Father, who art in heaven. We repeat it, we memorize it, we quote it in churches, but we never understand it. And anything you repeat without understanding, you reduce its power. So let me say this boldly. The Our Father is not a prayer to recite. It is a pattern to follow. Let that settle. Because if you treat it like a script, you will sound spiritual, but remain powerless. But if you understand it as a template, it will transform how you think, how you speak, and how you engage heaven. Now watch this. Because Jesus didn't start the prayer with your needs. He didn't start with your problems. He didn't start with your request. He started with position. Our Father. Stop right there. Don't rush it, because that one phrase destroys religious distance. Our Father. He didn't say our Master, our Creator, our distant God. Jesus said, Father. That is not just a title, that is a relationship. And this is where many people are already off track. Because you are trying to pray without understanding your position. You are approaching God like a stranger, like an outsider, like someone trying to get his attention. When Jesus said, start from identity, our Father, that means before you ask for anything, before you request anything, before you say, give me, you must understand, I belong here. I am not interrupting heaven. I am not begging for access. I am not hoping God listens. He is my Father. Now feel the confidence in that. Feel the boldness in that. Feel the stability in that. Because if God is your Father, then prayer is not a performance. It is a conversation from position. Now let's go deeper, because Jesus doesn't stop there. Our Father, who art in heaven. Our Father, who is in heaven. Now watch the balance, because this is powerful. He gives you intimacy with Father, but then he reminds you of authority. Who is in heaven? Who art in heaven? In other words, yes, He is close, but He is not casual. Yes, He is your Father, but He is also King. And this is where people get it twisted. Some people are so focused on God's love, they forget His authority. Others are so focused on His power, they forget His closeness. But Jesus brings both together in one statement. Our Father, who art in heaven. Close enough to hear you, powerful enough to do something about it. Now pause, because if you don't get this part right, everything else in your prayer will be off. If you see God as distant, you will beg. If you see God as weak, you will doubt. If you see God incorrectly, you will pray incorrectly. So Jesus says, before you say anything else, fix your perspective. Now here's where it gets even deeper, because the next line is where most people completely miss the point. Hallowed be thy name, or holy is your name. Now let me challenge you, because we've been taught to treat this like poetry. Hallowed. Sounds nice, sounds holy, sounds churchy, but what does it mean? It means to set apart, to honor, to recognize as supreme. So Jesus is saying, before you ask for anything, align your heart with the reality of who God is. Not your problem, not your situation, not your fear. Him. Because prayer is not about informing God of your issues. He already knows. He knows everything. He's omnipresent and omniscient. Prayer is about aligning you with His reality. So when you say, hallowed be thy name, you are declaring, God, you are above this. You are greater than this. You are not limited by what I'm facing. And something shifts, not in heaven, but in you. Your fear starts shrinking. Your confidence starts rising. Your perspective starts changing. Why? Because you started prayer the right way. Not with panic, but with position. Not with fear, but with focus. Now listen carefully, because this is where we begin to confront religion again. Most people start prayer with problems. Lord, I need. God, fix this. Father, help me. Jesus says no. Start with identity. Move to perspective. Then we talk about everything else. And that right there explains why many prayers feel powerless. Because you're starting from the wrong place. You're starting from earth, trying to reach heaven. When Jesus taught, start from heaven's perspective and speak into earth. Now let that sit on you, because we're just getting started. In section B, we're going to move into the next line, and this is where it gets dangerous. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. And when you understand that, you will realize prayer is not about getting God to do your will. It's about enforcing His. Prayer is not request, it is authorization. Now, stay with me, because this is where prayer stops being safe and starts becoming dangerous. We have already established your position. Our Father, you belong, you have access, you are not an outsider trying to be heard. But now Jesus moves from identity to assignment. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Don't rush that, because inside those words is a complete redefinition of what prayer actually is. Because Jesus Christ did not say, pray that you escape earth. He said, pray that heaven invades it. That changes everything. That changes the whole frame. Prayer is not your exit strategy. It is your deployment. You're not here to survive the world. You are here to transform it. Now let that challenge you, because most prayers today are centered around comfort. Lord, make my life easier. God, remove this problem. Father, take this pressure away. And Jesus is saying, you're praying too small. Because kingdom prayer is not about convenience. It is about alignment. Thy kingdom come. What does that mean? It means let your rule, your government, your system be established here. Not just in heaven, here, in your life, in your mind, in your family, in your environment. Now this is where it gets uncomfortable. Because if you are asking for his kingdom to come, that means something else must leave. Your will, your control, your preferences, your agenda. And this is where many people stop praying like Jesus, because they don't actually want God's will. They want God to bless their will. But Jesus makes it clear, thy will be done. Not negotiated, not adjusted, not partially accepted. Done. Now feel the weight of that, because this is not passive language. This is decisive. Be done. That is the language of authority. So when you pray this, you are not making a weak request. You are making a bold declaration. God, let your will override mine. Let your purpose interrupt my plans. Let your agenda take priority over my comfort. Now that sounds spiritual until it becomes personal. Because what happens when his will challenge your lifestyle? What happens when his will disrupts your relationships? What happens when his will requires sacrifice? Now prayer becomes real, because kingdom prayer will always confront your kingdom. You cannot pray, thy kingdom come, and still insist on being in control. One of them has to give. One of them has to go. Now listen carefully, because this is where most people miss the power of this statement. Jesus didn't just say, thy will be done. He added something critical. On earth as it is in heaven. That is the standard. Not partially, not occasionally. As it is in heaven. So let me ask you, is there sickness in heaven? Not at all. No. Is there confusion in heaven? No. Is there lack in heaven? No. Is there fear in heaven? No. So when you pray, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven, you are declaring, let heaven's reality become my reality. Now feel that shift, because prayer just moved from begging to legislating. You are no longer saying, God, if you can. You are saying, God, you already established it. Now let it manifest here. That is a completely different posture. And this is why Jesus got results. He wasn't trying to convince God to act. He was aligning with what heaven had already decided and realizing it into the earth. Now here's the part that will stretch you and maybe even confront you. God will not override your authority on earth, because he gave it to man. So if his will is going to be done here, it will be done through someone who understands it and is willing to declare it. That's where you come in. Prayer is your authorization to bring heaven into earth. That's the simplest definition of prayer. Prayer is your authorization to bring heaven into earth. Not emotionally, not occasionally, intentionally. So when chaos shows up, you don't just react. You respond with alignment. Thy will be done. When fear tries to take over, you don't just accept it. You confront it. Thy kingdom come. When situations look impossible, you don't shrink. You speak from a higher reality. On earth as it is in heaven. Now this is where prayer becomes powerful, because you stop being a spectator and become a participant. You stop watching life happen to you and start enforcing what has already been established. Now let me press this deeper, because this is where many people hesitate. This kind of prayer requires confidence, not arrogance, not pride. Confidence in your position, confidence in the covenant, confidence in the authority you have been given. And if you don't see yourself correctly, you will never pray this way. You will default back to begging, back to doubting, back to hoping instead of knowing. But Jesus is calling you higher. He is saying, stop praying like someone without access. Stop praying like someone without authority. Start praying like someone who represents heaven. Because that's what you are. Now, sit with this. Let it settle in your spirit. Because in the other section, we are going to move into something even more practical and even more confronting. Give us this day our daily bread. And when you understand that, you will realize God is not just concerned with your purpose. He is concerned with your provision. Provision is not a request. It is a result of alignment. Now lean in, because this is where most people get confused. We have talked about position. We have talked about alignment. We have talked about the kingdom. Now Jesus shifts to something that feels personal. Give us this day our daily bread. And at first glance, it sounds like a request. God, give me what I need. Lord, provide for me. But if you read this like that, you've already missed it. Because Jesus is not teaching dependency rooted in fear. He is teaching provision rooted in relationship. Pause for a minute, let that settle. Because there is a difference between begging for provision and expecting it. And most people have been trained to beg. Lord, I hope you come through. God, I don't know how this is going to work. Father, please help. Please don't let me go without. That is not faith. That is anxiety. We're in religious language. And Jesus is confronting that mindset with one statement. Give us this day our daily bread. Now watch the order, because this is critical. He did not start the prayer here. He didn't say, start by asking for what you need. No, he said, establish your identity. Align with the kingdom. Submit to God's will. Then provision flows. So provision is not the focus. It is the result. Now this is where people get it twisted, because they isolate this verse and build their entire prayer life around needs. Money, bills, opportunities, open doors, and they wonder why they feel stuck, because they skipped alignment and went straight to provision. But in the kingdom, order matters. You don't seek provision first. You seek the kingdom, and you seek the king and his kingdom. Seek first the kingdom, and provision follows. Jesus said it plainly. Seek first the kingdom. Then what? All these things will be added. Jesus said that plainly. So when you pray, give us this day our daily bread, you're not begging for scraps. You are standing in alignment and expecting supply. Now let's go deeper, because this phrase is loaded. Give us, not give me. Us, us, us. That means kingdom prayer is not selfish. It expands your perspective beyond your personal needs. You're not just praying for your house, your bills, your situation. You are thinking collectively, because in a kingdom, no citizen is supposed to lack. So when you say, give us, you are acknowledging, I am part of something bigger than myself. Now that shifts your heart from survival to stewardship, because if God provides, it's not just for you to consume, it's for you to distribute. Now watch this, because this will confront some thinking. Daily bread, not weekly, not monthly, not stored up out of fear. Daily. Why? Because God is not trying to create independent people. He is cultivating consistent trust. Now that does not mean you don't plan. It doesn't mean you don't build, but it does mean your confidence is not yours. It's in your source. Your confidence is not in your name, it's in your source. So every day you wake up with an awareness. I am sustained, not by my job, not by my connections, not by my economy, but by God. Now that changes how you live. Because when you know your source, you stop fearing shortage. You stop panicking when things shift. You stop attaching your identity to income. Because your provision is not tied to a system. It's tied to a king. Now listen carefully, because this is where many people struggle. They say, I am praying, but I'm still lacking. And I hear that, but I have to ask you something, and don't answer quickly. Are you aligned or just asking? Because provision flows through alignment. If you are outside of purpose, outside of obedience, outside of kingdom priorities, you create friction in what should flow freely. Now that is not condemnation, that is clarity, because God is not a vending machine. You don't insert a prayer and expect a product. No, He is a father with a kingdom. He is your Father in heaven, and provision supports purpose. So if your life is disconnected from purpose, you will constantly feel like you are chasing provision. But when you align with purpose, provision starts chasing you. Now feel that shift, because this is where anxiety begins to break. You stop waking up worried about bills and start waking up focused on assignment. And as you move in assignment, what you need meets you there. Now let me bring this home, because this is practical. When you pray, give us this day our daily bread, you are declaring, God, everything I need today to fulfill your will, I trust is already supplied. Not maybe, not hopefully, already. So you move differently. You think differently. You respond differently. You don't shrink back. You step forward. Because provision is no longer a question mark. It's a settled reality. Now here's the tension. Because this kind of thinking requires you to let go of control. You can't say, God is my source, and still live like everything depends on you. At some point, you have to trust what you just prayed. Now sit with that. Let it settle. Because in the other section, we're going into something even deeper and even more confronting. Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And when you understand that, you will realize unforgiveness is not just emotional. It's a violation of covenant flow. Forgiveness is not optional. It is the flow of the kingdom. Now this is where it gets real. Not theoretical, not theological, personal. Because everything we have talked about, position, alignment, provision, now Jesus brings it straight to your heart. Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Don't rush past that, because this line has stopped more prayers than anything else. And most people don't even realize it, because we like the first part, forgive us. Yes, Lord, wash me, cleanse me, cover me under the blood. We shout about grace, we celebrate mercy, we lean into forgiveness when it benefits us. But then Jesus connects it to something uncomfortable. As we forgive. Wait, you mean my forgiveness is connected to how I forgive? Yes. And this is where people start to resist. Because now prayer is not just about what God does for you. It's about what flows through you. Let me say it plainly. You cannot receive what you refuse to release. Pause for a minute. Let that sit. Because unforgiveness is not just an emotion. It is a blockage. A disruption in the flow of the kingdom in your life. You're asking God for mercy while holding on to offense. You're asking God for grace while withholding it from others. And Jesus is saying, that's not how this works. Because in the kingdom, forgiveness is not a suggestion. It's a law of flow. What you receive must move through you. Now I know what some people are thinking. Yeah, but you don't know what they did to me. You are right, I don't. But I know this. Holding on to it is costing you more than it's costing them. Because every time you rehearse the offense, every time you replay the pain, every time you justify the bitterness, you tighten the blockage. And then you go to prayer wondering why you feel stuck. Wondering why nothing is moving. Wondering why heaven feels silent. And it's not that God is withholding, it's that you are not flowing. Now listen carefully, because this is not about pretending it didn't hurt. This is not about ignoring the offense. This is not about calling wrong right. Forgiveness is not denial, it is release. It is a decision. to no longer carry what the cross already paid for. Now feel that. Because when Jesus went to the cross, he didn't just carry your sin. He carried theirs too. So when you hold unforgiveness, you are holding on to something that has already been accounted for. And that creates tension in your spirit because you are trying to live in grace while resisting its flow. Now let me take this deeper, because Jesus didn't say, forgive when they apologize. He didn't say, forgive when they deserve it. He said, as we forgive. Present tense, ongoing, continuous. This is a lifestyle, not a one-time act. Which means you don't wait for closure. You don't wait for justice. You don't wait for them to get it right. You forgive because you understand the kingdom. Because you understand what was done for you. Now, here's where it becomes powerful. When you release forgiveness, you don't just free them. You free yourself from the weight, from the bitterness, from the emotional chains you've been carrying. And suddenly, prayer feels different, lighter, clearer, stronger, because the blockage is gone. Now let me press this one more time, because this is where transformation happens. Some of you are asking God for a breakthrough, but you're holding on to offense. Some of you are asking for peace, but you are feeding resentment. Some of you are asking for elevation, but you are tied to past pain. And God is saying, release it. Not for them, for you. So that what I've already provided can actually reach you. Now take a moment and be honest. Who do you need to forgive? Don't spiritualize it. Don't avoid it. Bring the face to your mind. Bring the situation up. Feel it. And now make a decision. Not emotional, not temporary. Covenant level. I release them. I let it go. I refuse to carry this anymore. And you may have to do it again. Tomorrow and the next day and the next day. But every time you do, you are clearing the path for the kingdom to flow freely in your life. Now this is how Jesus closes the template, and it all comes together. Prayer is not begging. Prayer is not performance. Prayer is not repetition. Prayer is alignment, authorization, provision, and flow from the Father through you into the earth. And when you understand that, you stop praying weak prayers, you stop living powerless lives, and you step into something greater. A life where heaven is not distant, but active. A life where God is not abstract, but present. A life where prayer is not empty words, but undeniable results. So now the question is not, do you know the prayer? The question is, will you live it? Thank you. Transforming people's lives, the Kingdom Sanctuary of Eden and Outreach Ministries. With our clothing bins all over, we're collecting clothes and shoes and giving it out to all in the communities, in the cities, and all over the world. Wherever there's a need, the Kingdom Sanctuary of Eden is there to fulfill it. Please continue all your donations, whether it be clothes, food, shoes, or monetary donations, so we can take care of God's people all over the world. The donation starts with you. Let's build the kingdom together.